The latency of working with a third party was extremely high, and honestly, the quality was not amazing. And so in the spirit of full vertical integration at Tesla, we brought all of the labeling in-house. And so over time, we've grown more than 1,000-person data labeling org that is full of professional labelers who are working very closely with the engineers. So actually, they're here in the US and co-located with the engineers here in Bay Area as well.
This is a reconstructed 3D point cloud from our cameras. And the main innovation here is the density of the point cloud.
Hey, I'm Steven and this is Solving the Money Problem. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. And you guys and girls thought the Tesla AI Day content was over. Not even close. In today's video, we're talking about Tesla's secret $100 billion asset that was revealed at Tesla's AI Day that nobody seems to be talking about. Well, almost nobody. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing Tesla's incredible data and labeling engine. With so much justified excitement around Tesla's AI Day, you know, their own chip design, Dojo, and of course the Tesla humanoid robot to come in the future, Tesla's data engine, their auto labeling, and their incredible simulator seem to be completely overlooked. Practically everybody watching understands that Tesla has dozens of incredible, huge competitive advantages across every aspect of their business. But Tesla's data engine, not only Tesla's exponentially growing fleet of vehicles covered in a suite of sensors to collect data, but Tesla's in-house labeling efforts, their auto labeling, and their simulator are one of, if not Tesla's greatest competitive advantage today. Easily worth $100+ billion. Over the long term, probably multiple trillions of dollars. And no, I'm not joking here, I actually mean this. While I understand that a humanoid robot is an incredibly sexy piece of technology and what everybody in the mainstream media was discussing following Tesla's AI Day, and given the insane sales of the limited edition Optimus Bot merch designs in the merch store, I can understand that you guys and girls were super excited as well. And while Tesla's in-house designed chip blew your minds, I guess there's more nerds watching this channel than I realized. And by the way, thanks to everybody who picked up the limited edition chip stack merch design. Almost 1,000 units sold while that was available. By the way, it was limited edition. There are no more in the merch store, so if you missed out, rip you. But surprise, surprise, I have a new merch design available. Once again, this is limited edition. There's shirts, mugs, and hoodies available, so check out the link in the description if you're interested. This design features Tesla's incredible in-house designed chip wafer. The point that I'm getting at here, Tesla's humanoid robot, Optimus Bot, super sexy, certainly deserving of its own merch, and you guys agreed, huge sales. The same can be said of Tesla's in-house chip design. However, the third incredibly important thing that we saw at Tesla's AI Day, their data engine, well, let's be honest, not so sexy. I'm probably not going to have a data engine merch design. No, I'm definitely not, let's be honest. But it's so important and such a valuable asset within Tesla's business, one that nobody's discussing. So time to change that. Let's do a deep dive into Tesla's labeling, their data engine, and their incredible simulator. If you love crypto, stocks, and free stuff, or just want to help out the channel, check out these great offers. BlockFi are launching the world's first Bitcoin rewards credit card. People in the US can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase with no annual fee using the BlockFi Bitcoin rewards credit card. Check out the link in the description. And for a limited time, you can get up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, where you can use cryptocurrency to earn interest, borrow cash, and buy or sell crypto. If you want your free crypto, use the link in the description. And if you'd like up to 2 free stocks, check out the link in the description to WeBull. If you open a new account, you'll get 1 free stock valued up to $300 just for opening an account. And if you make an initial deposit of $5 or more, you'll get a second free stock valued up to $2,000. Seriously. Free stocks? Yes, please. And finally, if you're in Australia, the UK, or New Zealand, you can get a free stock with stake, also linked in the description. Thanks so much for your support, guys. Let's get back to it.
The story of datasets is critical, of course. So far, we've talked only about neural networks, but neural networks only establish an upper bound on your performance. Many of these neural networks, they have hundreds of millions of parameters. And these hundreds of millions of parameters, they have to be set correctly. If you have a bad setting of parameters, it's not going to work. So neural networks are just an upper bound. You also need massive data sets to actually train the correct algorithms inside them.
So words really matter, and Andre there explicitly stating that Tesla needs a massive amount of data to train their neural networks, and anyone else hoping to compete with Tesla will also need a massive amount of data. On a scale of size, the only thing bigger than massive is your mum. Andre is very careful with his words here. He's not talking about a large set of data. He's talking about a massive set of data. And this is where Tesla's fleet comes in. Tesla's fleet now around 2 million vehicles strong and growing 200,000 plus vehicles per quarter and collecting this massive exponentially increasing amount of data for Tesla to train on. Nobody else has the fleet, nobody else has the data, nobody else has a fucking chance.
Now, in particular, when I joined roughly 4 years ago, we were working with a third party to obtain a lot of our data sets. Now, unfortunately, we found very quickly that working with a third party to get data sets for something this critical was just not going to cut it. The latency of working with a third party was extremely high, and honestly, the quality was not amazing. And so in the spirit of full vertical integration at Tesla, we brought all of the labeling in-house. And so over time, we've grown more than 1,000 person data labeling org that is full of professional labelers who are working very closely with the engineers. So actually, they're here in the US and co-located with the engineers here in Bay Area as well.
This was an incredibly important insight. I've never heard this before from Tesla. They now have over 1,000 in-house professional data labelers in the Bay Area on Bay Area salaries. Now, I'm just going to pull a number out of my ass here and suggest that these folks are probably on around $100,000 per year salary. Multiply that out by 1,000 plus employees, and we're talking about a payroll just for Tesla's expert in-house data labeling team of over $100 million per year. Anyone want to guess in the comments below how much Ford, GM or Volkswagen are paying their in-house data labeling team, if they even have one?
And so we work very closely with them. And we also build all of the infrastructure for them from scratch ourselves. So we have a team we are going to meet later today that develops and maintains all of this infrastructure for data labeling. And so here, for example, I'm showing some of the screenshots of some of the latency, throughput, and quality statistics that we maintain about all of the labeling workflows and the individual people involved and all the tasks and how the numbers of labels are growing over time. So we found this to be quite critical, and we're very proud of this. Now, in the beginning, roughly 3 or 4 years ago, most of our labeling was in image space. And so you can imagine that this is taking quite some time to annotate an image like this, and this is what it looked like, where we are sort of drawing polygons and polylines on top of these single individual images. As I mentioned, we need millions of vector space labels, so this is not going to cut it. So very quickly, we graduated to 3-dimensional or 4-dimensional labeling, where we are directly labeling in vector space, not in individual images. So here what I'm showing is a clip, and you are seeing a very small reconstruction. You're about to see a lot more reconstructions soon, but it's a very small reconstruction of the ground plane on which the car drove, and a little bit of the point cloud here that was reconstructed. And what you're seeing here is that the labeler is changing the labels directly in vector space, and then we are reprojecting those changes into camera images. So we're labeling directly in vector space, and this gave us a massive increase in throughput for a lot of our labels because you label once in 3D, and then you get to reproject. But even this, we realized, was actually not going to cut it because people and computers have different pros and cons. So people are extremely good at things like semantics, but computers are very good at geometry, reconstruction, triangulation, tracking. And so really for us, it's much more becoming a story of how do humans and computers collaborate to actually create these vector space data sets.
So just taking a quick pause here to let what we've just heard sink in. Tesla was originally doing labeling in 2D image space on flat images. They then transitioned to 4D labeling stuff in 3 dimensions, and over time, that saw a 100 times increase in labeling throughput. And as we heard from Andre, that wasn't going to cut it yet. So they increased their throughput 100 times, and Tesla's like, you know what? This isn't good enough. We need to improve this even further.
And so we're going to now talk about auto labeling, which is some of the infrastructure we've developed for labeling these clips at scale.
So even though we have lots of human labelers, the amount of training data needed for training the network significantly outnumbers them. So we try to invest in a massive auto labeling pipeline. One of the first tasks we want to label is the road surface. We are querying XY points on the ground and asking for the network to predict the height of the ground surface, along with various semantics such as curbs, lane boundaries, road surface, drivable space, etc. Here's an example of how that looks like. So here, this is an optimized road surface that reprojects into the 8 cameras that the car has and across all of time. And you can see how it's consistent across both space and time.
This is really incredible. One of the most mind-blowing things of Tesla's entire AI Day presentation. So keep in mind, this is auto-labeling. Humans aren't involved in this labeling process. And what Tesla's AI, their auto-labeling AI, is able to do is determine the curvature, the camber, the shape of the road, curbs, edges, boundaries, drivable space, and non-drivable space, all automatically without human intervention. And it is doing an incredibly accurate job.
So a single car driving through some location can sweep out some patch around the trajectory using this technique. But we don't have to stop there. So here, we collected different clips from the same location, from different cars maybe, and each of them sweeps out some part of their road. Cool thing is we can bring them all together into a single giant optimization. So here, these 16 different trips are organized aligned using various features such as road edges, lane lines. All of them should agree with each other and also agree with all of their image space observations. Together, this produces an effective way to label the road surface, not just where the car drove, but also in other locations that it hasn't driven yet. We don't have to stop at just the road surface. We can also arbitrarily reconstruct 3D static obstacles. Here, this is a reconstructed 3D point cloud from our cameras. And the main innovation here is the density of the point cloud. Typically, these points require texture to form associations from one frame to the next frame. But here, we are able to produce these points even on textureless surfaces like the road surface or walls. And this is really useful to annotate arbitrary obstacles that we can see in the world.
Oh, surprise, surprise, another absolutely mind-blowing example of Tesla's AI capabilities. Now, for those of you that don't know, this data, this point cloud, was generated purely based on vision, just using cameras. No radar, no LiDAR, and by the way, if you ever hear somebody claiming LiDAR or radar are necessary for full self-driving, to gauge depth, etc. One, you're talking to a fool who doesn't know what they're talking about and probably shouldn't be talking since they don't know what they're talking about. But two, if you're a kind soul, maybe you can help them see the error of their ways and show them this example clip, which is clearly showing that Tesla, just using vision and their big brain engineers who've developed some incredible AI, are able to accurately generate an incredibly detailed point cloud showing depth of objects in a scene without the need for LiDAR or radar. Oh, by the way, geez, it's been too long. I almost forgot to remind you guys and girls.
Tesla is the car company.
We started our first exploration of this with the Remove the Radar project. We removed it in a very short time span, I think, within 3 months.
And this is another brain-breaking fact. Tesla, in the span of just 3 months, was able to make radar completely redundant, totally useless, and remove it from their hardware stack where they'd previously been relying on it to provide depth information. And maybe this would be a good time to remind everybody watching that pretty much every other automaker on the planet and pretty much every other full self-driving startup who don't even make their own vehicles but makes the hardware for full self-driving is still dependent on, reliant upon at least radar and more likely LiDAR, an extremely expensive, totally useless piece of hardware if you have the competence, the capability, and the combined engineering brains to remove this unnecessary bullshit from your hardware. Tesla did it in 3 months. No one else is even close enough to realizing that they don't need this. In fact, it's worse than that. Tesla removed radar because it was giving them mixed signals, and ultimately, pure vision is a much better, safer, cleaner, and more accurate approach. Yet everybody else, practically everyone else in the entire industry, is still blindly pursuing LiDAR because they think they need it. They haven't even got to the point where they realize that it's giving them bad data and causing them to produce inaccurate, dangerous results. Everyone else is so far behind in the race to solve autonomy that they haven't even realized there's obstacles up ahead that they'll inevitably trip over.
In the early days of the network, we noticed, for example, in low visibility conditions, the network can suffer understandably because obviously this truck just dumped a bunch of snow on us and it's really hard to see. But we should still remember that this car was in front of us.
Now, I just quickly want to talk about this example because when Tesla announced that they were going to be removing radar from their hardware stack, I immediately tweeted about this, saying that Tesla was effectively swinging around their gigantic engineering brains and flexing on, in fact, turkey slapping the entire autonomous driving industry across the face, showing how confident they are in a pure vision approach. I made a video about this as well, discussing in detail how and why Tesla was able to remove radar from their hardware stack. And I had a lot of people pushing back, bro, what if there's an obstruction? What if there's poor visibility? What if there's snow? What if there's fog? How can I possibly know what's going on? Now, I'll be honest, I kind of thought it was self-evident, but if not, well, now we're going to see exactly how Tesla's managed to do this.
But our networks early on did not do this because of the lack of data in such conditions. So what we did, we asked the fleet to produce lots of similar clips, and the fleet responded, it did. It produces lots of video clips where shit's falling out of all other vehicles. And we sent this through our auto labeling pipeline that was able to label 10K clips within a week. This would have taken several months with humans labeling every single clip here. So we did this for 200 different conditions, and we were able to very quickly create large data sets, and that's how we were able to remove this. So once we train the networks with this data, you can see that it's totally working and keeps in memory that this object was there and provides this.
So that's the mind-blowing tale of how Tesla was able to completely remove radar from their hardware stack and still maintain the ability to track objects even if they're occluded or completely obstructed because of debris or other conditions affecting visibility temporarily. Just like a human with our own brain would go, oh yeah, there was a car there just because there's some fog or there's some snow in the way now. There's still a car there, right? Tesla's full self-driving AI is able to do the same thing. What's really stunning and really exemplifies how critically important the data, the fleet is that Tesla was able to send out a query, just a few lines of code, which you saw there on the screen, and almost immediately source 10,000 similar situations for training their software to get better where there was debris, obstruction of objects, in just a matter of weeks. So just want to pose a question to everybody watching. Please feel free to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you're not Tesla and you don't have a fleet of around 2 million vehicles strong, growing exponentially quarter after quarter, soon this will be 4 million, 5 million, 8 million, 10 million, by the end of the decade, over 100 million vehicles strong. If you don't have a fleet and you want to query for some similar examples of a few edge cases to train your own full self-driving AI to get better, how do you get the data? You can't get it. You literally can't get the data. That's kind of a problem, pretty big problem. Seriously though, do you guys and girls have a sense of just how big of a problem this actually is for anyone else attempting to solve autonomy? To give you guys some context, Waymo, or Wamo as our favorite class clown would prefer to say, has a fleet of around 600 vehicles at last publicly disclosed, okay? Tesla has a fleet of around 2 million vehicles. 600 is 0.03% of 2 million. That's not 3%. No, that's 0.03%. Tesla effectively has 3,333 times more data than Waymo. Let me give you guys a tangible financial example. Let's say you're a budding investor and your goal is to get to a $1 million net worth. Well, if today you had $300 and then you increase that by 3,333 times, you end up a millionaire. The difference between having $300 and being a millionaire, that is the difference between Waymo, arguably number 2 in autonomy, and Tesla. Another way to think about this example, Tesla was able to cite over 10,000 different edge cases showing obstructions, falling off vehicles, as our presenter said. If Waymo was to do the same thing with their fleet size, they would get 3 examples. Probably not quite enough to train their AI on. Something to think about. The final piece of the puzzle is simulations. Now, you will hear a few bellends out there who will claim that all you need is simulations to get all the data you possibly require for solving this issue of fully autonomous vehicles. This is absolute horseshit, although simulations are incredibly useful, as we're about to hear.
In addition to auto labeling, we also invest heavily in using simulation for labeling our data. So a few things that I wanted to point out, for example, the ground surface. It's not plain asphalt. There are lots of cars and cracks and tar seams. There's some patchwork done on top of it. Vehicles move realistically. The truck is articulated, even goes over the curb and makes a wide turn. The other cars behave smartly. They avoid collisions, go around cars, and also smooth and accelerate smoothly, brake and accelerate smoothly. The car here with the logo on the top is Autopilot. Actually, Autopilot is driving that car, and it's making an unproductive left turn. And since this is simulation, it starts from the vector space. So it has perfect labels. Here we show a few of the labels that we produce. These are vehicle cuboids with kinematics, depth, surface normals, segmentation. But Andre can name a new task that he wants next week, and we can very quickly produce this because we already have the vector space, and we can write the code to produce these labels very, very quickly. So when does simulation help? It helps, number 1, when the data is difficult to source. As large as our fleet is, it can still be hard to get some crazy scenes, like this couple and their dog running on the highway, while there are other high-speed cars around. This is a pretty rare scene, I'd say, but still can happen, and Autopilot still needs to handle it when it happens.
So this is a very important point. One of the times that simulations help the most is in creating extremely unlying, ultra outlier edge cases before they're encountered for the very first time. You probably don't want Tesla's autopilot software encountering a strange scenario for the very first time in the real world if it could have been simulated thousands, tens of thousands of times previously in a simulator. Real world data is certainly the best kind of data, but in these extreme outliers, these ultra edge cases, it's better to have done many thousands of simulations ahead of time before your vehicle finally encounters a similar edge case in reality.
When data is difficult to label, there are hundreds of pedestrians crossing the road. This could be a Manhattan, downtown, people crossing the road. It's going to take several hours for humans to label this clip. And even for automatic labeling algorithms, this is really hard to get the association right, and it can produce like bad velocities. But in simulation, this is trivial because you already have the objects. You just have to like spit out the cuboids and the velocities. And also, finally, when we introduce closed-loop behavior, where the cars needs to be in a determined situation or the data depends on the actions, this is pretty much the only way to get it reliably. What's needed to make this happen? Number 1, accurate sensor simulation. Again, the point of the simulation is not to just produce pretty pictures. It needs to produce what the camera in the car would see and other sensors would see. So here, we are stepping through different exposure settings of the real camera on the left side and the simulation on the right side. We're able to pretty much match what the real cameras do.
Now, fair warning, make sure you're sitting down for this because we're about to see some next level shit.
In order to do this, we had to model a lot of the properties of the camera in our sensor simulation, starting from sensor noise, motion blur, optical distortions, even headlight transmissions, even like diffraction patterns of the windshield, etc. We don't use this just for the autopilot software. We also use it to make hardware decisions such as lens design, camera design, sensor placement, even headlight transmission properties. Second, we need to render the visuals in a realistic manner. You cannot have what in the game industry called jaggies. These are aliasing artifacts that are a dead giveaway that this is simulation. We don't want them. So we go through a lot of paints to produce nice spatiotemporal anti-aliasing. We also are working on neural rendering techniques to make this even more realistic. Yeah. In addition, we also use ray tracing to produce realistic lighting and global illumination.
Now, is it just me or was that an ode to Grand Theft Auto? I mean, hey, let me know in the comments below. Speaking of, this engine that Tesla has created is so incredibly realistic, their simulator, that they could theoretically license this to game developers in the future and save them a huge amount of development work. I'm not messing around either, guys. There is some serious value to what Tesla has created here. Just to give you guys some context, Rockstar spent over $250 million in the development of Grand Theft Auto 5. And the game engine is a very meaningful chunk of that budget. And this is probably a good time to once again mention that when Tesla's vehicles can safely drive you from point A to point B, once they've actually solved autonomy, Tesla has PS5 quality gaming computers built into the latest iterations of their vehicles. Hint, hint.
Okay, that's the last of the cop cars, I think. So we need to have realistic assets, like the moose on the road here. We have thousands of assets in our library, and they can wear different shirts and actually can move realistically. So this is really cool. We also have a lot of different locations mapped and created to create these sim environments. We have actually 2,000 miles of road built, and this is almost the length of the roadway from the east coast to the west coast of the United States, which I think is pretty cool. In addition, we have built efficient tooling to build several miles more on a single day for a single artist. But this is just tip of the iceberg. Actually, most of the data that we use to train is created procedurally using algorithms as opposed to artists making these simulation scenarios. So these are all procedurally created roads with lots of parameters such as curvature, varying trees, cones, poles, cars with different velocities, and the interaction produce an endless stream of data for the network. But a lot of this data can be boring because the network may not already get it correct. So what we do is we use also ML-based techniques to basically perturb the network to see where it's failing at and create more data around the failure points of the network. So this is in closed loop trying to make the network performance be better.
So for those of you who've been keeping up to date with the latest in Tesla's full self-driving and checking out some of Galley's videos over on HyperCharts, this will be the perfect scenario for Tesla to simulate the Seattle monorail.
We don't want to stop there. So actually we want to recreate any failures that happens to the autopilot in simulation so that we can hold autopilot to the same bar from then on. So here on the left side, you're seeing a real clip that was collected from a car. It then goes through our auto labeling pipeline to produce a 3D reconstruction of the scene along with all the moving objects. With this combined with the original visual information, we recreate the same scene synthetically and create a simulation scenario entirely out of it. So, and then when we replay autopilot on it, autopilot can do entirely new things and we can form new worlds, new outcomes from the original failure. This is amazing because we really don't want autopilot to fail, and when it fails, we want to capture it and keep it to that bar. Not just that, we can actually take the same approach that we said earlier and take it one step further. We can use neural rendering techniques to make it look even more realistic. So we take the original video clip, recreate a synthetic simulation from it, and then apply neural rendering techniques on top of it, and it produces this, which looks amazing in my opinion, because this one is very realistic and looks almost like it was captured by the actual cameras. This is the result from last night, because it was cool and we wanted to present it.
This is mind-blowing stuff. I mean, Tesla's simulator, if you guys look at the clips on screen now, the difference between the original Tesla's simulation with the neural rendering, it's almost indistinguishable. We're not just talking about similar amount of polygons, things look quite similar. the style, the graininess, the color profile of the cameras being simulated as well. This is incredible. So there we have it, Tesla's $100 billion Flywheel, their data engine. We have the exponentially growing fleet collecting edge cases and data for training their neural networks. That data is then fed into the neural networks, most of this through auto labeling. There's very few humans involved for the amount of data that's actually being processed. And as we saw, Tesla, in the blink of an eye, can write a few lines of code and bring in 10,000 plus edge case examples in a single week for further training. In addition to that, we have Tesla's simulator, which looks like GTA 6 on steroids, which can simulate edge cases and extremely rare scenarios with perfect accuracy and perfect labels. And topping it all off is the chip we saw unveiled at Tesla's AI Day, designed in-house, which will ultimately go into their Dojo supercomputer. By the way, another reminder, if you'd like to pick up your limited edition Dojo wafer design merch, there's a link in the description. These won't be in the store for too long, so if you're interested, now's the time. And just to complete this flywheel, we have the fleet collecting the data coming in, the auto labeling, the ability to spin off simulations for edge cases, etc. And now Tesla's in-house designed chip and Dojo supercomputer is going to take their AI training to the next level. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot one more extremely important point before we wrap up today's video.
Tesla is just a car company.
So I hope you guys and girls have enjoyed today's video. I know data labeling and simulations aren't exactly super sexy, but this is one of the most important and overlooked things that Tesla discussed at AI Day. The final thing I want to leave you folks with is a question. Who do you think is number 2 in terms of solving autonomy? This is a serious question, by the way, so please let me know in the comments below. Who's in the second position? I mean, they're obviously in a distant second, but who is it? Who has a fleet even close to the scale that Tesla has? Who has the data? Who's done the work in developing data labeling? Who's realized that stuff like LiDAR and radar are completely useless and in fact counterproductive to actually solving autonomy? And who has a simulator on the same level as Tesla? Something to think about. And I'm serious, let me know in the comments below. Who do you actually believe is in the number 2 position? I'm Stephen Mark Ryan. This is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. And don't forget the BlockFi Bitcoin Rewards credit card, where you can earn 1.5% Bitcoin back on every purchase. There's a link in the description. You can also earn up to $250 in crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, also linked below. And finally, don't forget your free stocks with WeBull and Stake, also linked in the description. These great offers also help out the channel. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know. I read all your comments. P.S. If you're still watching, you're awesome. If you'd like early access, exclusive videos, regular Q&As, our private Discord server and more, consider supporting the channel at patreon.com/solvingthemoneyproblem so I can keep creating content for you guys. There's a link in the description. You can now also become a member of the channel for some exclusive perks. To learn more, click the join button next to subscribe. And don't forget to check out our merch store. Either way, the best form of support is you being here and watching, so thanks again.